Again, because so we are recording this call, and I want to welcome all of you to the call. And I like the fact that we have such a different audience today, a variety of folks. And what I want to start with is, what's our why? You know, I envision our webinars to be part of our continuing education, and that we offer continuing education at no charge to our clients and anybody who wants to come, because we want to engage in powerful coaching conversations around the most important topics of the time. And it gives us an opportunity to sharpen the saw. And especially today, when we talk about peak performance as we're moving into 2022 and what we can do to be that best version of ourselves as we enter 2022. And so all the conversations we have is an integration material that focuses on you, your role as a coach and leader, and the organizations you're in. So all of this information should apply to those three places. And this should, if you don't walk away with one tool or a resource for growth, you call me and I'll give you more. But I know that you're going to have at least two that you're going to have for growth today. So a few bits of housekeeping. If you have questions, put them in chat. We're going to have one breakout session that you can talk to one another. If for some reason we have a lot of questions in chat and we don't get them answered, we will post them at Global IOC. We have not had to do that yet, but we will create a folder for questions that came out of the workshop. And you can send those to me as well at Global IOC, Peggy Marshall, actually at, I think it's P Marshall at Global IOC. If you have questions, and we'll post them as well. And make sure you follow us on LinkedIn. We've got blogs coming out every week or every other week. We've got a newsletter that comes out every other week. We're going to have fabulous materials and resources available in 2022 in our communities of practice. That will be workshops, that will be book reviews, our blogs will be posted. And if you have something, anybody on this call has something you want to post, just let me know. So let's dig in. So what is peak performance? A classic definition of peak performance is that we focus on high level functioning. What's the best we can function? What is the highest level we can function? And how is it targeted to us reaching our full potential? So we're always reaching for that star in terms of being the very best we can be. So there's a really nice article we use in our master's program that talks about what are the components of peak performance. So we think about peak performance as things that we do physically, okay? But peak performance really is involved with three areas: cognitive, emotional, and physiological, okay? So cognitive talks about how we're able to focus our minds, okay? And how do we get things out of our way? And Stan and I just had a conversation about what you focus on grows bigger, okay? So what you give energy to is gonna make it bigger and bigger. So what you're giving your selective attention to will determine how successful you are in 2022. So can you concentrate? Can you do absolute focus? And can you perceive the speed bumps as challenging, yet overcoming them and being excited by them? And can you replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts? And there's just so much research on positivity that I'm not going to spend any more time talking about it, but we know when we can shift from negative to positive, it makes a really big difference. And then emotionally, how do we take our emotions to organize the energy efficiently? And another conversation, we had a great conversation before we started the call about the work that Colleen and I are doing on drama, and that when we have a thought or an experience, we make meaning from that thought or experience, and from that meaning creates the emotions. So if we want to be really grounded in peak performance, the emotions we experience, we have to figure out we have to determine what they are, and are they leading us into the best version of ourselves? Bart Brackett has a measurement tool. So here's a tool for you. It's called Ruler. We recognize what we're feeling. We understand where it's coming from. We label it correctly. Even if it feels negative to us, we label it. And then the E is, how do we want to express it? That is our choice. It's always our choice in how to express it. And then finally regulate it. Old emotional intelligence said, regulate it from the top. No, you have to understand it and then regulate it. And so that's going to lead to peak performance as well. And then physiological, and Carol's going to talk a lot about this later, is how we fuel the body, how we expend our energy, and then balance that with recovery. Many of us, and I'm guilty of this often, we go, 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 drop. Okay, so how do we create a go, go and recover, and a go, go and a recover, and get it in balance? And then we avoid the over arousal. And what they're talking about in the article is over arousal is that stage fright, and that comes from what we're telling ourselves. So physiological reaction to things start in those thoughts that I was talking about earlier. It starts in those thoughts and those experiences. So we can avoid over arousal by what we tell ourselves about the experience. So today, the things that I want you to think about as we go through the presentation is motivation. What are the things that we have to consider about peak performance? How motivated and how we stay motivated, how we create change. What's the neuroscience of change telling us, and how do we engage it? How do we fuel our performance? How do we set goals? How do we build habits? How do we develop grit? And then above all, we're going to talk about resilience. You can see the asterisk ones are the things we're going to follow up on today. So I'm going to go quickly through change. And Stan and I were talking about this, that, one of the things, change starts with endings. We don't think about it, but something has to stop for us to begin. We think we begin. And it's really funny because we hit the New Year's resolution and everybody's beginning, but they haven't decided what they're going to let go of. So what we need to end, we have to understand why we're moving forward. We have to stay forward focused. We have to understand what we're giving up. In order to do any new thing, something has to come off our plates. I know that everybody on this call and most people I know have Thanksgiving plates. And what a Thanksgiving plate is, you can't put a pea on a Thanksgiving plate because they're so full of everything that's on the table. Well, if you don't make space for it, you can't go live into it. So we have to let go of something and be okay with what we have to let go of. We have to realize that we do need to change and that change is possible. A big one is, what's our support team? Who is going to help us and who's going to hold us back? And be really clear of how people are going to react to the new that we're going to do. And it may come from sources we didn't even think about. Keep informed about what you need to do for the change, and respect what you've learned from the past that you can take forward into being successful with the change. And then we get in the neutral zone. And so many people talk to me when they're in the neutral zone because it's the gray area. I was talking with my cousin about that this week, about gray is hard. It's destabilizing. It's really hard for us. And so we either want black or white. But when we're in the gray, that's the neutral zone that we're talking about. Keep your requirements small. Like, know what you're changing and don't change anything else. When I talk to clients, I say, do not do more than 3 things at once. Okay, 3 changes. And they got to be small. And if they can build on each other, that's good. Scrap old rules. What are rules you've created for yourself that you can let go of? As Stan said earlier, it's a goal. Set a goal, and goals are time bound. You know when you're going to be able to be successful with the goal. And pay attention when you're in the neutral zone, because it is scary. So pay attention when you're in the neutral zone to what you are saying to yourself and to others, and what's your story. Finally, the new beginnings start with my purpose. How does it align with what I want and need in my life, and the best version of me, and how I want to move into it? Picture yourself successful in the change. Make sure you have a plan you can execute, and track and write down daily everything about your plan. And I actually think journaling really fits nice here. Be consistent with how you're going to execute on the new beginning. What are symbols this week, last week, and this week I was talking to the faculty about a song. What's your song for 2022 going to be? And as I worked with a team last Friday, They came with some crazy songs and they were fun songs. And now when that team hears the songs of everybody else, that symbol of that song motivates them. But symbols can be pictures. They can be anything that motivates and keeps you in. Look for the quick wins. And for those high achievers on this call, which I think represents everybody, make sure you celebrate. How are you going to celebrate? With that, I'm going to turn it to Carol to talk about neuroscience.
Perfect. Thank you, Peggy. So one of the things that Peggy and I love is this quote, right? And sometimes as coaches, we've got to remind ourselves and our clients that the only thing we really have control over is ourselves, our thoughts, and our behaviors, right? So what's also important is how do you integrate neuroscience, how the brain works, into our practice so that our clients can understand what's behind the way they think, that cognitive aspect, and then what's behind the way they respond to the way they think. Okay, so that neuroscience aspect is important for peak performance. So let's get down into the specifics around the brain. So the amygdala. The amygdala is the oldest part of our brain. The amygdala is there for 40,000 years. The amygdala was responsible for our survival as a human species, right? There's that saber-toothed tiger. It's our amygdala that helped us fight or flight when we saw that saber-toothed tiger coming at us. However, the amygdala is also responsible for our emotions. And we know that we have positive emotional responses or negative emotional responses. And when we are positively triggered or in a positive emotional state, we're in a reward state. What does that mean? Well, in a reward state, we're open, we want to collaborate, we're creative, we're engaged, we see the possibilities. But when our amygdala is in that negative emotional state, we see danger. We are pessimistic, we're defensive, we don't want to collaborate with our peers, and we see things as half empty, right? So the other thing about our brain and our amygdala is that there's no difference between a real threat, a bus coming at us, and a perceived threat, meaning maybe we're losing some autonomy or we believe that we are losing some of our fairness or some of our status, right? So perceived and real, our brain doesn't differentiate between the two. So what happens? There's a chemical reaction, and the hormones that are released are adrenaline and cortisol, which causes a physiological reaction. Blood pressure increases, our heart rate increases, and you see some people turn flush red. Okay? Now, if that is not managed, then what happens is we're causing bodily harm. We're literally becoming exhausted, our immune system is suppressed, and then we get into health problems. The other thing that happens when we're triggered and we are in that negative emotional response is that our brain is affected. How? Well, our prefrontal cortex as well as our hippocampus actually shrinks. And why is that important for peak performance? Well, the prefrontal lobe is responsible for, let's say, executive skills, right? It's our problem solving, it helps with our planning. So that shrinks, and then we have that decreased ability to process things. The hippocampus is there, it's like our fact checker, right? And if that shrinks, then we're not in a state where we can judge things optimally or rationally, all right? So what Peggy mentioned about the story, right? So literally we have about a quarter of a second between stimulus and response. That quarter of a second, that stimulus is an event that happens. Someone maybe interrupts you or challenges you. right? So something happens, that's your stimulus. Then we tell ourselves a story, right? Whatever that story is, we may think that that person challenges us, so doesn't want to support us, or they don't believe in what we're saying, but we make up a story. Based on that story, we have an emotional response. Our emotional response could be overly judgmental. We could be impatient. We can be defensive. We have this emotional story that we're telling ourselves. And then based on that emotions, we react, we respond. Okay? We behave in a certain way. Maybe we walk away. Maybe we say something that we can't really take back. Or maybe we ask questions and listen more. Okay? So as coaches, what do? Well, we want to help our clients and we want to help leaders recognize what their triggers are. That quarter of a second between stimulus and response, we want them to take a breath so that they can more appropriately process the event or that stimulus. There are many other strategies. We can have them reframe, we can have them visualize, or remove themselves from the situation. One of the quotes that Peggy and I love about Byron Katie is she says, all the suffering that goes on inside our minds is not reality. It's just the story we use to torture ourselves. Right? So she identifies 4 questions, and you see those 4 questions in front of you. And that's one of the strategies to help ourselves as coaches and also to help our clients and our leaders really process that stimulus. Okay. The other strategy we can use is the A to F disputation model, which is based on Albert Ellis, the initial ABC model. Okay. So there are a number of other strategies that we can use so that we can help process that cognitive, what we see, how we interpret, and how we act. Okay. So now we're going into a breakout. Okay. So 3 questions in front of you. Well, we kind of want to pick your brain. As Peggy was saying, we've got an illustrious group in front of us. In your breakout, we want you to consider 3 questions. The first one is, why is peak performance relevant today? Okay. Second question, Peggy went through the 8 components of peak performance: motivation, creating change, neuroscience, fueling performance, goals, habits, grit, and resilience. Are those the right ones? Are we missing another component? Okay. And then the third question, from everything that you've heard so far, what are your insights? What resonates with you that you could use for yourself as a coach or with your clients? Okay. What can you integrate into your coaching practice?
Okay, I'm going to open all rooms, and we've had some people have to leave this morning. So we're going to put Carol and Angela in a room, Michael and Stan in a room, and I'll go back and forth between the rooms. So you have, what did we say, 7 8 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this.
Perfect.
So you'll join, and then I'll join one room and go to another. I didn't realize, I thought maybe they were recording in breakout rooms, but they're not. So when Stan and Michael get back, we'll have Angela share her wisdom.
Okay, awesome. And Peggy, I'll just do like, basically I'll do the one slide just because of the time. Do you want me just to do, I can do the one slide.
Okay.
Is everybody back? No.
Not yet. And I was thinking about mine as well, that I don't have to, when I get to that one slide, it's not that, yeah.
Okay.
Those guys are, there they come. Okay, we're back. Did we lose Stan? Oh, there he is. Okay, good. Okay, now you're going to be really surprised, Stan. This is all new material for you. Okay, Carol.
Do we want to do a quick debrief on?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes. Angela is going to tell us something that she's going to share with us about peak performance. So hit it.
Well, thank you. What a great conversation, and all of this material just really lines up. It hits home for me because from the human resources perspective, and in that space in talent development that I spend a lot of time, everyone is talking about the great resignation and that turnover tsunami and people making decisions when they, are either having time to reflect, or if one of their, components of peak performance is out of balance. So Carolyn and I talked a little bit about how maybe that's a good time to make a decision and maybe it's not. So coaching coming alongside of this during this really interesting time, I think is super helpful to have a thinking partner. And I think in one of the lines of business where I do a lot of work, healthcare, nurses especially, they are physiologically depleted and burn out. So I think having a thinking partner, and then time and time again, something that also resonates with me is that people either have learned or have forgotten all of that basic brain neuroscience, and it is time to reconnect to that. So this is so powerful and so timely. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. And Angela, what I want to say is that I was thinking that exact same thing as we started today talking about peak performance. Can this be a slice of how we help people deal with resilience? If we keep our focus on being the best we can be and get the focus off of what's not working and what's pulling us down, could that be a tool that people could use to be even more effective? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael, Stan, want to weigh in on anything that we talked about?
I'm going to defer to Stan because he brought it up.
Oh, it was one of the key components that we talked about was E plus R equals O. The event plus your reaction really determines the outcome. And I was sharing with Michael back in 2018, I had to, my entire team was downsized, including myself. And I had to deliver that message. But I opened and I continually reminded them that the event plus the response equals the outcome. And I'm happy to say that 60% of my team remains on a team together. They ended up hooking up with this BGA, and they're still there working together. So they handled it very professionally, and they looked at, all right, this is happening. So now what? And what can we do? And they kept the emotions at bay. And that was a tough thing to do. It really was. So, and it also causes me, Viktor Frankl, I know where the book's at, and I got to go reread it. You got to, and Angela, you said something, and it's so right. You learn it, and then you kind of unlearn it. You kind of, especially my age anymore, I forget. So you got to go back, and I'm going to dust off Viktor Frankl's book, because it was an easy read, and I'm all about easy reads, and two, it's a great reminder of this whole how you respond to things.
Yes, it's a profound book. That's great. Thank you for sharing. This really makes this community that much better. So thank you for that. So Carol, now I'll turn it back to you.
Perfect. So very quickly, the other element is around fueling performance. And for me, this was an aha moment when Peggy showed me the Human Performance Institute, the four dimensions of energy. So at the base is the physical energy. And by physical energy, we mean eating, sleeping, movement, exercise, and recovery. Right? So that all goes towards the physical energy, the base of your energy. It dictates the quantity of energy you'll have, right? And Angela mentioned earlier that whole recovery, and recovery is self-care. High performance athletes have realized that without recovery, their performance is actually negatively impacted, which is the same for all of us. Recovery is an important aspect of the physical energy, the base of energy. Then you get to emotional energy. We think of emotional energy think of it as the quality of our energy. Okay? You need the physical energy to manage your emotional energy. And one of the things we want to do with clients is increase the language, the vocabulary around emotions. There are more than 5 or 6 emotions, right? The more you can equip them, the more precise they'll be around how to label their emotions. Okay? Then you get to the mental energy. Mental energy is the ability to focus and channel that energy. And again, in order to be sharp mentally, cognitively, you need to check in with your clients to see how they're doing physically and emotionally. And then finally, spiritually. Spiritual energy is not about religion. Spiritual energy is about your purpose, right? It's the force of your energy. Simon Sinek in his why, right, talking about the why, start with why, talks about the why. What is our why as coaches, as leaders, as clients? And then you've also have Simon Sinek when he talks about, igniting the infinite game, right? In infinite game, he talks about the purpose being the just cause. So what's important for us, for our clients, is to really be clear on what our purpose is, especially now with everything going on. Is our purpose clear, and are we living up to that purpose, or are we being distracted by noise? Okay.
So I want to see, okay, Michael, talk to us.
So I'm struggling as a coach with some of my clients who, because there is so much change going on in some of the organizations, and the purpose, the organizational purpose may not be clear. And then as leaders, there's a struggle for how do I share purpose when I don't even know what it is. And I'm just wondering if any of you have insights or suggestions, or if that even applies here.
So Michael, I was with one of my clients on Friday, and one of the exercises I did with them is, what is the mission? What is the purpose? Do we understand the mission and purpose in the same way? More importantly, do we communicate it in the same way? So this was a leadership team that reports to the senior vice president, and then they all have teams of 12 or 13 underneath them. And I'm like, if you 7 are not communicating to that group the same purpose, the same mission, then we have a challenge. More importantly, what are the behaviors that align with the mission and the purpose? And so I think we use language really I don't think we're careful with our language. I don't think we're descriptive with our language. We just throw words out. We need to we communicate more effectively. We hold each other accountable. What does it mean to hold each other accountable? How do we hold each other accountable? And I think the struggle is becoming really clear. Do we have clarity? And then how do we move forward as a team in describing that and being with our people? So I think that's where we get a little sideways in organizations about passion and purpose.
Hey, Peg.
Yeah.
I think back one of the 832 books you gave us to read, I think it was Start with Why.
Yes.
Right. And if leaders can start with why, so their team understands, why are we doing this crazy stuff? This makes no sense. And then if you frame it with why, well, here's why. And 1, 2, 3, or 4, I think it's so important. And I actually worked for a leader that never started with why. He kept it a secret. He kept a secret what finance was looking at, versus sharing it with us so we understood. It would have been much easier. So back to that book, Start with Why, I think is so important to help organizations and help leaders and senior leaders communicate down to their subordinates.
Yeah. And something that Carol was talking about with passion and purpose is being able to develop flow. And Stan, you said that before we started the call. When we're in our passion, our purpose, we're doing things because we know why we're doing it. The purpose, the mission of the Global IOC is to change the world one coach at a time. Why? The why is because we believe that coaches have different conversations with people. They're empowering conversations rather than directive conversations. They engage people. Coaches are thinking partners. They help people think differently about what's going on, surfacing their beliefs. But that why has to be, if I went to all the faculty and I said, okay, tell me why we want to change the world, we might have different reasons for why we want to do it. And so you have to be always talking about it. And one of the things that I thought was really good about my former organization was one of the leaders was really into being the best at developing people. And part of that was every time you were in a meeting, you had to talk about what you were developing. So it wasn't in 2020, in 2018, you decided what you're going to develop and you put it in a drawer. You not only had to think about it for yourself, you had to know you were going to be held accountable to it at the next meeting. Okay. So even Michael, the mission purpose thing with organizations, that people would be accountable to talking about it at the very next meeting. So that could be really awesome too. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because there is an amazing blog that was written that has a lot of tools and resources in it. But think about these very quickly in terms of if you want to be different, if you want to be the best you can be in 2022, you have to be specific about what it is you're going to do. It can't be a broad aim. It can't be it has to be very specific in order to do it. And then you have to seize the opportunities that align with you making that change. One of my favorite leaders was always talking to his team about how much is left, how far do we have to go? But you can't know how far you have to go if you don't track and measure. So in my world, as a coach, I think we should be writing things down daily so that we know what we're measuring. Be a realistic optimist. Know what can get in your way. And it's really funny, in the habit literature, it's Jeremy Dean, and it's very academic, but it's good. He talks in Making and Breaking Habits, he talks about people don't like the realism part of being optimistic when they're making change because they think that they're setting themselves up for failure. So it's a real coaching moment to say, what will get in your way and how do you prepare for it? Because the optimist says nothing will get in my way. And we have to say, okay, what could get in your way? What has gotten in your way in the past? What are some simple things you can do with that? Focus on getting better rather than being the best, okay? What is in every team I work with right now, it's 5% better. What is 5% better is achievable versus this big goal out there? What is 5% better going to look like, and how are you going to execute? Grit is the resilience to stay in the game. Okay, is when you go over that speed bump, you don't slow down, you get over it and then you keep going. Okay, so how do you continue to build that consistency and resilience towards that? Build your willpower muscle. We know that willpower takes glucose from the brain, as Carol walked us through the brain. It takes glucose from the brain, and the more we have to use our willpower during the day, the less availability we have of that glucose. So how do we build willpower muscle? If you go back to Gretchen Rubin's work on habits, we structure time to do the things we need to do. Therefore, we don't have to force ourselves to do them. They're written into our calendar. So that's a way to build willpower muscle. And the things you don't want to do, don't put them in front of you. See, and you'll remember Sean Aker says, if you don't want to watch TV, take the batteries out of your remote.
Yep.
You know, I thought that was so good. And if you want to exercise after work, make for sure that your clothes are in the car. Two simple things that if you don't do it, you're tempting fate. And then
You want to practice the
finally,
guitar, have the guitar next to your chair.
exactly. And so focus on what you're going to do, what you will do, not what you won't do, because your brain doesn't recognize not. It drops not out. So this is what this is what I will do today. Not this is what I will not eat chocolate. And I guarantee you will think about chocolate all day. Okay. Because your brain can't recognize not. So for more information about the 9 things successful people do differently from Heidi Halverson, go to our website and pull down the blog if you haven't already seen it, because there's other resources in there that you can focus on. Carol, what's coming up?
Well, lastly, Peggy and I wanted you to know that we have the upcoming Peak Performance Program that starts February 14th. Who is this Peak Performance Program for? It's not only for coaches. It's for coaches, it's for leaders, it's for people who have set an ambitious target for 2022. It's for people who are seeking maybe to get a promotion or elevate their career or change their career. It's for leaders or coaches that really want to drive performance for themselves or maybe for their team around them. And lastly, it's an opportunity for people out there that may be coaching and are not certified, or maybe thinking about becoming a coach. It's a way to get them into this program, it's like a gateway to becoming a business coach as well. So what we need from you, our call to action, is for you to help promote this program amongst your clients, amongst your network. It is really an opportunity for leaders, for coaches to incorporate the latest research on skills, behaviors, and attributes of peak performance so that they can elevate their performance in a meaningful way.
Yay. So think about somebody who might benefit from it. And as always, in the peak performance survey, if you want to see it, I'll send it out to you all that are on the call, and you can take it as well, just to see where you're landing as far as the survey. Our purpose in the peak performance survey was to isolate 2 or 3 areas that a person would focus on throughout the year to get better with their performance. So it's not like all 8 areas. It would be a hierarchy and a ranking of that. So I'll make sure that comes out. I'll make sure the article comes out to you. And the other thing I'm going to send you is Mark Brackett's emotions. I got a chart of the emotions so you can label them, because I think that would be something that you might be interested in as well. So now you have 5 tools at least that you got today from coming to the workshop. So I hope that was worth it for you. In January 26th, our webinar is Cultivating Stillness. We're going to talk about the difference between stillness and reflection, and how to get that into with our clients, and think about stillness as a recovery process for our clients. The webinars in 2022, we're still putting them together in terms of topic. They'll be on the last Wednesday of the month. come to Global IOC, look at our blogs, read our blogs, watch what's happening in communities of practice, because we're going to blast off this year. Our theme song is Don't Stop Us Now from Queen. So we're going to have a lot of material out there, thought leadership and events. So classes coming up. We have an advanced class starting on the 27th of January. We have a master class starting on February 15th. And as Carol said earlier, our peak performance starts on February 14th, which I think is a really good day to do something good for you, for you and your heart to love yourself. And then always follow us on LinkedIn and we'll make sure the links are right. So any questions before we end?
I
No, this
just
is really
want to just
good
thank
stuff,
you.
Peggy.
Go ahead.
I
Michael?
have a comment
Yeah.
before we go. I mean, it's just a thought. There were a group of us that thrived in the coaching environment back in the day. And I think people like John Bartolome and Hernan, they need to know what you have coming up.
Okay. I'll make sure I get
They need
them.
to know, and I would be very surprised, even if they do it on their dime, right? I mean, they make plenty of money. They're not retired, right? They can afford it. So that's just a thought I wanted to throw out there. You think
Okay.
about Ed, what's his name? Ed
Miller.
Yeah, Ed Miller. You think
Yeah.
about those guys, and part of it is staying connected with the tribe, but a big
Yes.
part of it is just helping people. It's altruistic what we
Yeah.
learn, and we reach out to people and help them. So that's
I
all.
might pose it as a reunion stand. Look for something on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
Pull together the tribal. Angela,
Yeah.
you had your hand up. Okay. Michael, you were saying something.
I was just saying thank you. Yes, there were tons of tools. Anytime you do one of these, it's like my toolbox becomes so heavy and wonderful. So thank you. And
Thank you.
Carol.
And Carol,
Thank you.
amazing. So
That was
thank
great.
you. She's such a great partner. I just love her dearly. And I'm so grateful for all the people in my life. And Carol and Angela and Michael being part of faculty. Thank you so much. So everyone have a great holiday. If I don't talk to you before, enjoy and look for amazing things coming in 2022. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.